Morning, friends. Ash here, WAT News, with an election update. It's the 3rd of December, 2020. And caught this coming out of Gateway Pundit this morning. Investigation of 100 ballot sample in Arizona finds 3% of the ballots were deemed fraudulent in favor of Joe Biden. Larger audit has been granted by Christina Layla, December 2nd. Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden on election night while voters were still standing in line. Fox News calling Arizona for Joe Biden gave cover to the corrupt Democrat machine in Maricopa County to produce enough ballots for Biden to backfill the number of votes projected by Fox News. The GOP filed a lawsuit in Arizona to audit a sample of 100 ballots to prove there was massive voter fraud. Excuse me. The Arizona GOP on Wednesday announced the findings from their investigation of 100 duplicate ballots in which 2 votes were discovered to have been altered and removed from President Trump's total. In the name of transparency, a judge decided to order a review of 100 random ballots to see if there was fraud in Arizona. 1 ballot was changed from Trump to Biden, and another ballot was completely taken away from Trump. This is a 3% margin of fraud in Biden's favor. 2 votes taken away from Trump and 1 added to Biden. President Trump reacted to the news. In Arizona, it turns out that 3% of the votes in the cast in the 100-count vote sampling were tainted or worse. This would be, if carried forward, approximately 90,000 votes more than we would need to win the state. Now we were granted a much larger sample to work with. Wow, Trump said. A larger audit has been granted. The audit found 1 Trump vote arbitrarily excluded, another Trump vote struck, and then fraudulently added to Biden. Total fraud averaging 3%. Biden margin of fraud less than 0.05%. Thus, if 3% fraud rate remains on larger sample, Trump easily wins Arizona. Congressman Paul Gosar, Republican, Arizona, said. 2. The audit found 1 Trump vote arbitrarily excluded, another Trump vote struck, and then fraudulently added to Biden. So you can see that in just a very small sample in Arizona, they already found fraud, which now has opened up the door for more of the ballots to be looked at, and we'll have to see how that all plays out. But there's a larger point here that I wanted to make, and you're starting to see it play out, which is that there's 2 movies playing out here, right? One movie is the mainstream film, which a lot of people are still watching. I had a talk with someone in my family the other night, in fact, about the election, and I wanted to see what if they had seen anything about voter intimidation, fraud, anything like that, voter irregularities, and they have no clue about it. They think the election went off fine, and they think that Biden won in a clean election, which is just astounding to someone like me who follows alternate news. But you can see how the 2 movies were playing out, right? And this is part of the problem that happened in 2016 too, right? Where all these people were crying and freaking out on the Democrat side because, you got lied to. You were told a story that you believed because you didn't do your due diligence and look into it. And that's the bottom line. You either care to know or you don't, like I've been saying. And that's what the Matrix talks about, and that's how the world is. There's people that care to know. Those people have found out the truth. There's other people who do not care to know, and they don't know anything that's going on with this election at all. They have no clue. And so what the problem is going to be is if this election does become overturned because of massive voter fraud, you're going to have millions of people who have no clue about it because they don't care to know about it. And so they're going to start freaking out thinking that, the election is stolen, when in fact the election was stolen in the initial election. Not this point. This is trying to correct the wrongs that have been done in this election. But if you don't watch any other news but CNN or a few channels like that, you're going to have no idea what's going on in the country that you actually live in. And that's part of the problem with the mainstream press that we have. Is that if you're willingly misinforming me and you're giving me false information that I don't know to be false because I haven't done my due diligence, then you're putting me at a disadvantage. You're lying to me on purpose. You're misinforming me, and you're giving out propaganda, basically, or what's known as yellow journalism. In other words, if what you're telling me isn't true, then you're lying to me, and it's yellow journalism. That's what yellow journalism is. You're making up the article. It's fake. Nothing about it is real. Or maybe a couple of points of it may be facts, but then other parts of it are not factual and misinforming. So That's where we are. And the more until people start to figure this out, who watch the mainstream news and stop consuming it, you're going to continue to have problems like this. And my assumption is that no matter which way this thing goes now, we're in a position where there's going to be a lot of angry people, right? And that's exactly what certain people in this country want: polarization, people fighting, people angry at each other, people separated. And that's why they're keeping you separated from like your family and stuff during Thanksgiving, right? They don't want you to travel. They don't want you to go with other people and talk amongst yourself and share information. And one other thing that struck me about when I posted President Trump's speech yesterday, I really wanted to put that speech up, and I actually kind of like crashed out for a nap, and I wasn't paying attention to the news, so I didn't even know Trump was coming on. But I said, you know what, I want to get the speech out because I think a lot of people would want to see that speech, and I had a feeling that it was going to be that the speech itself would be pushed down wherever it could. So I put it up on my YouTube, and it got a lot of views, over 200, I think. And for me, that's a lot because I don't have a lot of people on my page, right? I only have like 90 something subscribers. But I just wanted to make that point that either way we go at this point, there's going to be a bunch of people upset. But if you don't inform yourself about what's really going on in your family, then you can be stuck in this sort of a bubble where you're being told misinformation and everyone in your circle is sort of beaming that information around to you because you don't care to know what's really going on. And that's not to come down on people that watch the MSM. It's just you have to make your own decision that at some point that you feel that what you're being told isn't true, then you need to go and find the information somewhere else. And wherever you go is up to you, of course, right? There's something on here I wanted to cover real quick. Giuliani was in Michigan. I covered a little bit of that hearing, not all of it. That's an interesting hearing as well, with many good witnesses that were testifying. Yeah, I don't remember what it was on this page now, but so we can go to the next article I pulled was what's going on. We covered the truckloads of ballots coming out of New York. Tonight, a Michigan poll worker reports on ballots received in sequential order by Joe Hoft. So here's more stuff coming out of Michigan now. And we watched Mr. Morgan, I think his name is Jesse Morgan, yesterday. He made a statement. I covered that. Later last night, President Trump's attorney, Phil Klein, stated there were at least 2 truckloads of ballots delivered from New York to Pennsylvania. Now tonight, a witness in front of Michigan's legislature claimed that she saw votes being counted in Detroit that had sequential ballot numbers, similar signatures, addresses all in one location with no date on the absentee envelopes. So, let's see if we could see this real quick. Is it maybe a long, it might be a long statement, I don't know. See if we could watch this real quick.
Ballots which had a sticky note on it saying 1980B/S. They didn't know what that meant, but it didn't take me long to figure out why it was saying what it meant. It is when they would scan a ballot, nothing would come on the system, so they would manually enter these, and that's when I figured out that they were not even referring to the poll book. So it is EPB/S, meaning election poll book or system. So none of these details were in either of those. And the thing that I said, when I started writing down the ballot numbers and the last names of the person of the ballot that had the name on the ballot, they were all in sequence. These are absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. They cannot be in sequence. 2232 cannot have 2233 next to it, because if they're mailed in, they come in all different numbers. And when I started noticing that these numbers are almost next to each other, like one or the other was in the middle, but then they were almost next to each other, my antennas went up. That's exactly when I thought something is not right here. Then I asked the supervisor. There was not even a date on those envelopes. It said November 0-2020. There was no second number there. Then I said, what is the date on this one? Then they got really mad at me. They said, you're not letting us do our job. You're disturbing us. And at that point, because we really don't want to be kicked out, so we were just kind of not challenging anything because we want to still stay in the room because we barely had anybody. Not only that, the sequence ballot numbers were all from the same area, like the Goddard Street in the downtown Detroit. Goddard Street, sequential ballots, signatures were all alike. They had no date stamp. It said, like, it was empty after zero. There was no third or second or first or nothing. And none of them were coming up in the system. They were all being entered manually. They even knew that none of these details would even be in the poll book or in the system.
Okay, and I also heard that this young lady was also accused by one of the Democrats on this panel of being a liar and was asked to go under oath. And she said that the truth will not change. If you wake me up in the middle of the night, basically, and ask me the same question, my answer will be the same. It's only people who are liars who have to have a longer memory and things like that. So she was actually accused by one of the people on the panel, I believe a Democrat, of lying. And she made a jaw-dropping statement, I heard after that, to that effect, that, I'm not a liar, and I will gladly sign any document you want me to, but just to say, why is my statement a lie and everyone else's you haven't called a liar? Why is what I'm saying a lie, right? So she stood up for herself. I want to cover the CNN tapes now, guys. Part 2, all right? Second batch. Zucker, CNN won't go down the rabbit hole of Hunter Biden. CNN VP, Cubans vote for Trump because they're very attracted to bullies, unquote. That's terrifying. Call participant. What in the world are Haberman and Sherman doing retweeting that Burisma story? So there's a couple vids here. Let's watch the first one, guys.
The Hunter Biden story was an explosive blow against Joe Biden leading up to the presidential election. But listen on this 9 a.m. editorial conference call at CNN how President Jeff Zucker chooses to not cover this important story.
I think on the Breitbart, New York Post, Fox News rabbit hole of Hunter Biden, which I don't think anybody outside of that world understood last night, the Wall Street Journal reported that their review of all corporate records showed no role for Joe Biden on the Chinese deal. And yes, I do put more credibility in the Wall Street Journal than I do in the New York Post.
Obviously, we're not going with the New York Post story right now on Hunter Biden, and which seems to be giving its marching orders to Fox News and the right-wing echo chamber about what to talk about today. Obviously, Hunter Biden's lawyer is quoted in that New York Post piece, and we'll just continue to report out. This is the very stuff that the president was impeached over. This is the stuff that Senate committees looked at and found nothing wrong in Joe Biden's interactions with Ukrainians, and now having an email that perhaps there was a meeting with someone from Burisma is, it seems, Rudy Giuliani's sort of dream a vision of how to throw stuff at the wall in these closing days of the campaign.
Hey, Jeff, it's just David on the Burisma story, and we should be awfully careful about that, obviously. But I do think there's a media story of what in the world are Maggie Haberman and Jake Sherman doing retweeting that story.
Okay, that's the first one. Interesting. Let's watch the second.
According to Senior Vice President of CNN, Cynthia Hudson, recorded on Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. telephone call on CNN, the reason the Cubans voted for Trump is because they're attracted to bullies. Check this out.
Trump has used the communism, socialism rhetoric as part of his hook for the Cubans in Miami. How that has resonated and how the Biden team has not done enough to counter that. This is all that the only reason they are supporting Trump is because of that narrative. And that narrative and the fact that, sadly, I have to say, there's a population that is very attracted to bullies, and no one is countering it properly. In Florida, the Cubans are going to vote for Trump, and that's terrifying. And so I think that there is a way to counter the narrative in Florida that is not being taken advantage of.
Okay. So that looks like they're planning on a message in Florida instead of news. They're just planning on what message can they put out to hurt Trump and help Biden. Here's the last one, guys.
Despite our own investigations into widespread voter fraud, CNN President Jeff Zucker still labels Trump as a bigger threat to our national security. Play the clip.
These Erie, Pennsylvania allegations of backdating ballots were retracted.
Trump continuing to undermine election integrity with baseless claims of fraud. Okay, and he's continuing to do it. And that leads to the question of whether or not Trump himself is a national security threat in light of what he's doing and in light of what he did in the debate.
Hey, Jeff, it's David. I just wanted to make one point about contextualizing Ben Ginsburg. He's without a doubt the preeminent election lawyer on the Republican side and probably one of the most preeminent election lawyers in America. He's also had a front row seat to every Republican election initiative for the past 4 years. If he says voter fraud isn't a thing, that's kind of the end of the story. And we don't treat that as a definitive answer as we cover the story throughout. Our refrain ought to be, Ben Ginsburg was across us for 40 years and says it doesn't exist.
So here you go again. This is, I find these to be, interesting, but it also shows you something else, right? Here's a bunch of people that instead of looking for the big news story and what that is, they're protecting one side in this whole thing, right? You can see that there's a pattern here of how can we hurt the Republican side, not report on the actual election or any of the allegations of voter fraud that they're making. Instead of reporting on those, like a good reporter would do, they instead are trying to put a narrative forward without looking into it that it's a false narrative. And that's not something that a press person should be doing in my mind. Allies of President Trump concerned DOJ will not conduct a meaningful investigation into voter fraud. So, Dave was talking about this on X22 last night. I think he's correct. And he was saying the fact that, Barr investigates information brought to him, right? Barr himself is not going to go out and look at the allegations. He has to have an agency like the FBI or other bring information to him of allegations of fraud, and then he investigates it. Okay, which and if you heard, Catherine Herridge came out and said actually Barr's words were twisted a little bit. He didn't say that. He said there was nothing yet that he's seen, right? But it's not over. There's more information coming in. The FBI has asked for more information from one of the witnesses that we saw, right, in the I believe it was the Arizona hearing. Some of his information is going to the FBI, and they have now. So we don't know yet where this is in terms of what the FBI knows about, what they're looking into, what they're going to then give to the DOJ. So hang back on Barr. We'll see how that plays out, I know that Barr goes way, 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 way back. Way, 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 way back to the first Bush. So if he is compromised, and he may be, Trump has a lot of people around him for a certain reason, and then he uses them for that reason, and then he gets rid of them. And we don't know yet if Barr is one of those people, if Barr is somebody that's on the right side of this or not. But even if he isn't, then he's being played in a certain way by Trump. He's a chess piece on the board, just like all the others. And that's what we all have to realize here. There's a game being played out, and people, I don't think, realize it. And if you haven't followed any of the boards, the CUE boards, then you're in the dark. You don't know what's really going down. So I've been telling people for 2.5, 3 years, go find the Q board and read it from the beginning, the first post in 2017 till now, and you'll know everything that's going on. You will have the whole puzzle in front of you, and you will understand where we are. And where we are, if the CUE board is correct, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I've been following it for long enough and doing my due diligence on it, to see that we are at the end of the movie now. And the movie has to play out in its full time, and its full whenever that is, right? And it's playing out on a schedule, right? You could see that. This month is going to be critically important to that. And I think what's going to start happening is more and more of this information will just keep coming out until the point where the mainstream press can't even ignore it anymore. It's going to be that big. because like I've said before, you can rig it when it's close and it's not that visible. But if you're trying to rig a blowout for one side, it becomes much more visible, because you have to flip a lot of votes, and you also have to inject ballots into the system illegally, and you have to destroy the other guy's ballots. So you have to do 3, 4, maybe 5 different scams in the same election. And when you do 3, 4, and 5 different scams in the same election, there's a lot more chances that you can get caught. And the other thing about this is, it is a massive conspiracy, and I think that needs to be stated here categorically. You can't do something this large unless you have a massive conspiracy of people all working in some kind of group, right? Now the question's going to be, who's running this whole thing? Because somebody had to. You can't do something like this in multiple states and just say, hey, you guys do whatever you think is best to get us the win. No, you have to have a massive scam in place. You got to have people palming cards and voting, and USBs missing, votes being injected in by the hundreds of thousands, people throwing ballots away, people making it so certain people can't vote. It's got to be a massive scam of like 3, 4, 5 different things you're doing all at the same time. And you can't do that just haphazardly. You have to have it run like a military, like a military program. So if that's the case, and who's running this, right? Who's the ringleader of it? Who's the master that's running the whole thing? Who's the people that are directing our votes out of this country? So we need to get into all this. And when you deep dig Dominion it all, you see it's a foreign company that's out of Russia, but it also connects to this PAC-biz thing, and to Pakistan. There's issues with that. There's issues with China, there's issues with Venezuela, and there's issues with Germany now. And I heard a rumor that, where's Haspel, right? Some people have said she got shot and injured in that raid on the Seidel server, but we don't know that yet. We have no information. A lot of rumor right now, so we know. I don't like to really delve into too much rumor, but I've been hearing a couple people say that she was over there, that she was involved in that raid somehow, and that she got injured. And we'll have to see how this all plays out, where Haspel is. No one's seen her for some time. And there's more that we don't know, I think, than we know, and that's the problem, right? There's something going on behind the scenes a lot, and we don't know a lot of that. So see how the lawsuits play out, guys. See if maybe the Pennsylvania one might get to Supreme Court. Keep an eye on Georgia. Keep an eye on Sidney Powell and Ellen Wood. Keep an eye on the other lawsuits. Keep an eye on all these things. There's a lot swirling around, people. So with that, guys, I appreciate you all watching my vids. Keep them posted. And I would just say, do your own due diligence and keep yourself informed as best you can, and in this situation, which is definitely hard to do. So with that, guys, I wish you peace and love. Wish you a wonderful day. And this is Ash, WAT News, signing off for now.